Ladies and gentlemen, we're back yet again for another Hoss Chat. We've made another week. We've made it to another one. This past weekend, we did nothing. There was no shows. I got to have some time off. But this coming weekend, I'll be up at the Ottawa Christmas Market on Sunday, December 10th, playing from 6:30 to 8. So come check that out. And December 15th, I'm doing a show with the Food Bank of Waterloo, where 100% of the proceeds go to the Food Bank of Waterloo region. That's something that a lot of more people in the community are relying on, so it'd be great if you come out and kind of support that and enjoy the music too. Folks, today we have a very, very special guest, none other than my own mom. Today on Hot Chat we have Susan Bordman, aka my mom. Mom, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you. Happy to be here.
Good. Well, without you, there wouldn't be this, because there wouldn't be me. Well, okay, so to start, we were just kind of chatting about where we could go with this. Do you want to give the listeners a bit of a background on what you did before being a mom?
Well, I've lived in Waterloo my entire life and I've done some odd jobs here and there with childcare. And then I switched to working in nursing homes. But then when I was about 33, I started having kids and been a stay-at-home mom ever since and helped with the family business and I enjoyed doing that. It's gone so fast, though. It's crazy. You guys are all grown up now.
And one of like the most interesting things I think when I think of you is in terms of like your past career and everything is travel, the places you've seen globally. Maybe not just from your career, but just through life.
Well, that was when I was like a teenager, because your grandpa. My dad was a scientist and traveled quite a bit. And we hitched rides with him. When he was on sabbatical in New Zealand for a year, we lived down there for a year. I don't remember it that much, though. I was only 15. Mm-hmm. But, it was a beautiful country. And just visiting relatives in Europe, specifically in Scotland and Wales and England. And, And then your dad and I used to do quite a lot of traveling. I think we went down to the States twice just for camping. So I haven't done extensive traveling, but... more than I've done now, for sure. I've not done a lot of traveling lately. Mm-hmm. But would love to.
Being around the world with Grandpa, then, what's like the most memorable place or places you were?
Well, probably I remember traveling Wales and Scotland in a Volkswagen van, the kind that has a tent that pops up the top, and we would just sit on the beach, park on the beach and camp. That was a lot of fun. I just visited all our relatives, and I remember having when Dad and I went to Scotland when we were in our early 20s. We sat around a table with a bunch of 90-year-olds and had a British tea time together and had all kinds of snacks. And that was fun. I had met some relatives I didn't even know existed. But any trips to the UK has always been fun.
No. Would you go now if you could?
Oh, I'd definitely love to go. Mm-hmm. But it's been so long. I haven't been there for so many years. I think the last time I went was probably with your dad back in the 90s. So it's been a long time. But when traveling is just amazing. Just meeting different people and seeing different areas, and history, particularly in the UK, is so fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely.
Castles and stuff like that when you're driving down the road. Compared to here, because the history for here is not that old, but in the UK, it's, you're going back thousands of years, or a couple of thousands.
Well, you kind of touched on too, I shouldn't say kind of touched on, it's a pretty significant thing, being like a mother. What would you say has surprised you the most of being a mom? If you can even answer that. That was a pretty big question.
Well, I was thinking about this the other day, I just was thinking about the stuff that when you guys were little, and all the activities I used to take you to, I probably wouldn't have the energy to do that now, but back then I had the energy to always take you to like Gymboree or like dance lessons or music lessons and all your sporting events and stuff like that. I do kind of miss that, but that was something that I still am awed that I had the energy to do then, because now I certainly wouldn't have the energy for that. But that was... And just seeing your achievements when you guys were little, and all the friends you've met along the way, and you're still friends with, which is nice.
I don't know how many mothers listen to this podcast, but if there was any moms listening, what would be some like basic advice you could give them?
Spend as much time as you can with your kids, I think, and just enjoy every minute of it, because they grow up so fast. And just treasuring all those times you spent together, and even not just their sports and their music lessons and their schoolwork and whatnot, but just family vacations, going camping together. That was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you probably remember a lot of those too, the camping trips we used to take. We
Mm-hmm.
were never extravagant on our holidays in the summertime. We never went to,
I'm almost happy about that though, because I think the amount of time we get to spend traveling there is part of it.
yeah,
Because I mean, I've talked about this on here before. I've never been on a plane,
right,
and I'm not against it, but I have no plans to go on one anytime soon.
yeah.
But
But it'd be fun to see the world. But sometimes when you're a family and you're a young family, it's nice to spend that time together because you have those memories.
mm-hmm.
When we went to, you know, Algonquin or Kildare, you know, those areas were so much fun. And that you just really just relax. You're not traveling around all over the place. You just sort of position in you know, in one area and just camping and being around the campfire. I think any family, you know, and it's relatively inexpensive too, really.
Well, I just think about all the people I even know to this day that go on vacations. They go, "Oh, we went and did this, and we just drank the entire time." Or even as kids, people would say, "Oh, we went to Cuba to some resort. My parents passed out on the beach drunk the whole time." And that's such like a night and day from our. I mean, I think in every right, that's a vacation. The things we were doing,
Yeah.
but that's just more of a genuine approach to it, I think.
Well, it would be nice for you at some point in your life to experience going to Europe and just seeing different parts of the world that completely different cultural, you know, cultures or the history and whatnot. But I mean, just to expand that a little bit, like that's what I kind of regret. But I guess I could still do it. I've always wanted to go to Italy.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, something like that would be a lot of fun
Mm-hmm.
to do.
Is that the top of your list? Would you say Italy and then travel across Europe would be the
I think
order?
so. Yeah. Germany, Italy. And just and the good thing about Europe is you can just jump on a train and go wherever, all over the place and really just explore the whole Europe would be so fascinating. Just like, well, Grandpa's traveled quite a bit and his stories are amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You'll have to get him on your podcast at some point.
You can talk about how he was accused of terrorism. One thing I've talked about on this podcast before is kind of like, well, obviously myself because it's my podcast, but my kind of career into music and kind of finding that.
We always thought you were going to be some sort of an animal care, like veterinarian
Mm-hmm.
or a researcher in terms of, but you know, and then I always thought too you'd be an artist, like you'd be involved in making animation or something like that because you're so good at drawing. I guess you've always had that artistic flair about you, right?
Yeah.
That creative flair.
Well, my question was going to be just for like the viewers to kind of get a perspective on it. What was, well, let's go back to, I don't know specifically the year or anything, but I had just gotten to university. I wanted to drop out. I didn't want to do it. And I wanted to pursue music. What was your thoughts at the time?
Well, I was a little bit worried about it, but I think I didn't want you to have any regrets. And if you never, and you actually said that to us that you'd take some time to explore this and see if it worked for you, and if it didn't, it didn't. But at least you knew you tried, and I didn't want to, I didn't want to rob you of that. But yeah, so I mean, it was something that you're passionate about, and you've always gone through phases of being passionate about stuff, and you throw everything you've got into it when you do find something that you're really interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I'm not going to take that away from you. Never would.
Well, and I think that's interesting because I talk to a lot of other people that are kind of like the independent artists, doing the independent artist thing like I am. And the big thing that gets mirrored is their ability to commit to it based on the support that they have. Because maybe they're doing it on the side, but they're working a full time and they're tired, so they're barely putting anything into it. And then on top of that, they have their parents coming down on them saying, "You're wasting your time doing this. This isn't a real job. This isn't whatever." And I mean, there's a lot of extenuating factors, but I know a lot of people feel kind of defeated by that. And that kind of kills the artistry of it.
Well, there is some truth to that too. You have to admit that as well. Like, I mean,
well, you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to not work and sell some like seashells on the road."
Exactly.
No, that's not reality.
Realistic, for sure. Yeah. But I think it's acknowledging that and knowing that if you've given your all at one thing and it's not working, then obviously you've got to sort of shift gears and think about something else. But I think you're capable of that.
Yeah,
sure.
and I mean, I can't complain of the success I've had so far. So I mean, it's not stopping me at all.
No.
Um, Going back to like when you were at that age, like going to school or figuring out what you wanted to do, did you ever think you'd be where you are now?
Not really, no. I mean, I never really had big plans like of anything specific I wanted to do. In fact, I just wanted to get out of high school basically at the
Mm-hmm.
time. But I always knew I wanted to work with kids, and so that's what I did. Go in that direction for a couple of years, but then found I wasn't as happy as with it as I thought I would be. But yeah, no, it was just. I think I wish, and I've always said this. I wish I was more focused on my education after high school a little bit, and I would. Like I went to college, but I wish I had gone a little farther with it. So I do have that regret, but basically that you know I enjoyed my youth. I enjoyed when I as a young family raising you kids. I have no regrets.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think even you just saying that there kind of ties in what I was just saying. That maybe that's something we both share is that fear of regret,
Mm,
or maybe not the fear of it, but maybe that's the motivation to do things, or maybe not the things that you plan on doing, but the things that you have to do.
right, for sure. Yeah.
Um, yeah. What I was also going to touch on was so you grew up in the 70s and 80s. How would you say
Don't age me that much.
how would you say growing up in like the modern 2000s that we're in now, how does that how does that align with how you grew up, and how is it different and how is it
Oh,
similar?
it's so completely different. I mean, what I experienced as a teenager in high school is completely different than what you guys experience, and the same with my parents. What they experienced was completely different. I mean, obviously, technology is so completely different now.
Mm-hmm.
I think we met up more as friends, and we didn't have, we didn't FaceTime, we didn't call each other as much. It was just meeting face to face. There was no computers. There was, but they were in their infancy, basically. Yeah, it was just. In some ways, it was more relaxing in a way because I think technology's made things a little bit more complicated. But when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, it just seemed more easier in a way than I think what you guys are experiencing now.
Yeah, I mean, I just even look at like Deanna, who's my younger sister. I think I've talked about her on here before. Even just the age gap we have, her upbringing from when I was at that stage of life is completely different than less than 10 years ago even.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Just that like with I think, I mean, not to sound like an old man complaining about phones, but TikTok, you're exposed to too much.
Yeah.
It's almost too much like especially politically, ideology, things happening in the world. And I mean, not to say being ignorant is the answer to that, but I think there's a lot of people that have opinions on things they know nothing about, or they've been exposed to things that that they should have never seen. I know a big one right now is on like YouTube and Instagram is like people are posting workplace deaths, like deaths happening in workplaces, and all these kids are seeing them and they're sending them back and forth to each other. And I've talked to friends that are teachers, and this is what they're finding kids are looking at like 10 and between 10 and 15
There's
years old.
just too much information we don't need to know about. I mean, there's just too much stuff that. And then it sort of trends with the kids too, doesn't it? I mean, they're, something like that. They're all interested in hearing about this stuff. And and I know that there's some people, I won't name names, but there's people who don't even let their kids have phones at this, like, at 16, 17 years old. Because they just don't want them exposed to all this unnecessary stuff that gives them the feeling that they need to be a certain way or act a certain way or be doing certain things. I just think, like, when I grew up, I wasn't exposed to that whatsoever, and we just went out and we played baseball or soccer, and we didn't worry about the latest dance trend or what clothes you absolutely have to have or how to do your hair and makeup just perfectly.
Yeah, well, the new one that I've noticed is they want, or I shouldn't say the narrative is that everybody needs to be a political, they need to air their political laundry online at all times and comment on every situation that happens. And
everyone has an opinion and everyone wants to be heard.
Yeah, and if you look historically, political stuff came from the population of people and what for the greater good, and then it became organized into government and everything, and then all of a sudden celebrities started speaking on political stuff and royalty and things like that, and then all of a sudden now in 2023, there you're almost forced to be involved with this political discussion as like a 15-year-old kid on these apps. Which, again, I'm not saying the answer to that is to be ignorant to issues and different ideology out in the world, because that's the age to start
It's good to be
forming
educated
things.
to some extent about it, but not overly saturated.
Right, but then I think some of these kids are hearing some things that they've never even contemplated or experienced, let alone. And then they go out in the world with this kind of, I don't know, almost like fake worldview and political ideology, and then they get cracked down pretty quick, and then it's, what do I do now?
I think it's just too much information. Like, there's just too much stuff out there to know, and you feel that you have to know everything because everybody else knows everything.
Yeah.
And it's always in your face constantly. Like, I have to admit, first thing I do when I wake up is I check the news. And I think it's been 8 hours since I checked. I feel bad if I haven't looked at my phone in a few hours because I want to be kept up to date with everything. Where that's probably not healthy. Like,
Well, think about like during COVID, where everyone was just at home glued to the media because the media was telling you when you could leave or what you could legally do. And I found myself in that I'd be looking at specific case counts or deaths for that day, and then at the end of the day, it's still sad. People, it's horrible. People's lives were lost and people were sick and things. But at the same time, the amount of deaths that I'm reading on CTV News isn't going to dictate what happens.
Having too much information, too much knowledge can be a bad thing, I think. And COVID was a perfect example of that. And it scared us because we thought, like we heard about the deaths. We heard about every little detail of COVID constantly, and we were trapped in our houses. So it was scary. It was a horrible thing to live through, for sure.
Well, I mean, even now with what's happening in the world in terms of war and genocide and things like that, and there's live death counts of certain geographic spots, which is, I understand it's bringing education to certain global issues that are happening internationally, but at the same time, you reading how many people were blown up today isn't going to change the outcome of what's happening, really. I mean, wouldn't it be more beneficial to try to get into contact with MPs and officials and things like that, or governing bodies that can actually impact that stuff, instead of just reading how many people got shot in the head today?
Or contact your local Red Cross and see how you can help, what you can donate, what you can do.
Yeah, I'm not trying to knock activism or being educated at all. I'm knocking, it's almost like the slacktivism, the people that are aware of what's happening. They know how many people died or what's going on, but they haven't done anything about it, and they're posting about it online, and they just look like a keyboard warrior. They're signaling that they're so modernly and educated and everything, but they're not really doing anything about it. Like, I know friends that'll post something about I don't want to give a specific example, but something that happens in the media, they'll post it and then they'll say, hey, you should post this because you have a big following. You need to educate some people on this. And sometimes it's something I know nothing about. And it's almost like you get challenged on saying, I'm not comfortable commenting on this at the moment because I'm not educated on it. So what's the alternative? To go ahead and fire off some stuff that you have no idea about, or let it alone have an opinion on? But
it's an unusual time, that's for sure. But I think knowledge can be power, but knowledge can be hurtful too and harmful. I think so. You got to sort of find a middle ground to it.
Well, Mom, we're kind of at the end here. Usually what I do at this point is, like, if it's somebody that's a musician, artist or something, like, let them like plug their dates or their website or where they can get found.
I can tell you what I made for a grocery list this week.
What would because you were talking about your life and experience and stuff, what's one last little tidbit you would leave with the listeners?
I think just get to know your children, interests, and support them in whatever they endeavor to do. I think even if it just even if it is wanting to be a musician and you think, well, it's such a tough business to get into, I think supporting them, but also letting them know that, if it doesn't work, that there should be other things you can look into. But I mean, supporting them is supporting you has been, and coming to your shows has been wonderful, and we really are very proud of you.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing this, Mom, and yeah, like I said, again, this weekend we'll be in Ottawa at the Ottawa Christmas Market, Sunday, December 10th. Week after that, it'll be December 15th for the Food Bank Waterloo Country Christmas Charity Show. And other than that, that's about it. Talk to you later, folks.